Hey folks, Joe Valley here from Quiet Light Brokerage and the Quiet Light Podcast. Thanks again for joining us one more time. Today's episode is sponsored by, you guessed it, Quiet Light Advisors, Quiet Light Brokerage, whatever you want to call us. We're here to help. First and foremost, we're all online entrepreneurs that have built, bought, or sold our own online businesses, and we're here to help you guys understand the value of your most valuable asset, or likely your most valuable asset, your business. You work your tail off. You've taken all sorts of risks to become an entrepreneur, grow that business. The worst thing you can do is make a quick decision to sell. We want you to think about it in advance, get the knowledge, get the power, get your position, your business in strong position to get maximum value with great deal terms. That's, a combination of those two things are very important. You can't get great value and terrible deal terms because you won't sleep well for years if you get the wrong kind of deal. Enough about us. Today's guest is Ryan Kramer from PingPong. No, not the game. It's the place that actually provides marketplace sellers and entrepreneurs a global solution for controlling their own domestic and international funds. A PingPong account, again, not the game, the service, the SaaS business, all that good stuff, enables companies to significantly reduce their costs when receiving or making international payments, all on a platform that helps increase operational efficiencies and save time, allows sellers to manage their business profits from a single source, which is the key. And managing your profits is the absolute key to eventually getting maximum value. So pay attention and boost your bottom line with the words of wisdom Ryan Kramer from PingPong is about to impart with us. Ryan, welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. That's a mouthful. I say it every episode that I do my own podcast, and I have not gotten it down like you have. So that was good.
Well, I'm putting a lot of pressure on you because I just said you're also going to impart words of wisdom.
Absolutely. So that's without question.
So look, a lot of people are just crazy busy trying to keep up with just inventory, and they screw that up a little bit, right? It's a challenge. And then the little details that can be, international payments and moving funds back and forth and accepting them the wrong way, maybe even allowing Amazon to do the exchange rate for you. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a big part of what you do. And I want you to say what you do in a big picture, because the bottom line, audience, is that services like PingPong will improve your bottom line and they will make your life easier. And when you go to sell your business, that bottom line is going to put more dollars in your pocket. It's going to put more dollars in your pocket and more control between now and when you eventually do sell. Right, Ryan? Is that about right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. So there's a lot of different things that you as an Amazon seller don't have control over, right? It's an asset that you as a brand want to have control over, but Amazon will dictate for you fees to have in your inventory in their warehouses, their referral fees, the commissions that you sell per product on their marketplaces. There's a lot of things that you don't have control of. That's just like cost of doing business, right? But what I try to tell people, and like why solutions like us exist or payment service providers exist, is because there is a way that you can impart and have control over money that's just left on the table. I say that when you're like raking in all that money, hopefully that you're getting every 2 weeks or so, there's that little that's left behind, and people just don't understand like why that you have to, when you're raking that in, you have to leave it behind. And that's a lot when it comes to fruition when you're an international seller, or if you're just paying out different service providers or your VAs or just any kind of freelancer. Money's coming and going all the time. You may not have this holistic view of, hey, can I actually save on my cost of doing business with a simple solution of a payment service provider like PingPong. So that's kind of where I shine the light, pull back the curtain and say, like, listen, you have this capability to save percentage points and put it to your bottom line as profit. It's not fictitious number. It's not made up. It's legitimate money that you can instantaneously start saving today when you do work with providers like us.
And so we're talking about cross-border payments. Anytime you pay your VAs or get paid from Amazon International, or it's not even just Amazon, it's any third-party platform where you may be selling international, making and receiving payments internationally across borders. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, 100%. So from the very basics of your business, you're probably working with a supplier not in the same country as you. And that's pretty typical, right? It's probably 90, 95, if not 97% of sellers out there. So I'm talking from a US perspective, just to make it pretty simple and straightforward. So from a US perspective, if I'm sourcing from a country like China and I start this working relationship, I'm probably going to start off with a company like Alibaba. That's pretty typical. They have their own network of suppliers, but if you don't go with a solution like them, there's ways to find out suppliers to figure out, hey, if I like this supplier XYZ, I'm going to pay them in two ways, right? I can either pay them in USD, which is the United States dollar, through an international wire, or I can pay them in local currency. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't have RMB or CNY just floating around my house in my wallet.
I don't even know what they stand for.
So yeah, believe it or not, those are just the two types of currencies that are locally accepted in the Chinese marketplace. So that's where people can use to pay out their employees. Like they can use it in the marketplace. That's what the currency like USD is for us. So I'm trying to think of that technical term, what it stands for, but RMB and CNY are just the two acronyms I'm going to use for my example.
Normally I call people out on acronyms. I mean,
I know.
I've heard these as well, what they really stand for.
Yeah. If you ask me like literally any other country, I use this example all the time and no one's like, hey, what's that stand for? And off the top of my head, I'm like, that's a good question. I need to look that up because it's escaping my mind. I have every other acronym in my Rolodex of Wheelhouse, what it stands for. But
so jumping ahead, if somebody is, round numbers, buying $100,000 worth of inventory on a monthly basis.
Yep.
And they actually,
so
how does PingPong help them with that?
Yeah, so I'll even take a step further back. So the traditional asset that you would have to do is if you're paying a supplier and you want to use an international bank, you would have to fly over to that country. You would have to set up an entity, establish it with either a person, most often than not, that represents you on an international way. You would have to show your documents of business, like your INC, all those kinds of documents that you can open up a bank account. It's time sucking and you have to do that in order to open a bank account. But because you're a small fish in a really, really big pond, you are not going to get a very big credit like limit where you can actually send in that currency. And that's because of safety guidelines and all that other fun stuff that we as a company get to jump through for you. Anyways, by paying in local currency, believe it or not, you can actually save percentage points. So in your example, on $100,000, if I'm paying a supplier in USD, in theory, I'm sending them $100,000. But what you're actually getting in that $100,000, there's percentage points on the invoice that you were receiving, anywhere from 2 to 4, potentially even 5% on what people are actually charging on top of that or baked into that invoice amount, where they're going to use that as currency conversion rate. So think about if you're going to a grocery store or something like that, or a restaurant, and use your credit card. Those, every time a credit card is swiped for convenience purposes, you are actually, there's a fee associated with it. So most times businesses eat that cost, but also there's opportunities for them to pass on that cost to you as a customer. It's in your line item. You see it as like, hey, credit card charge. Most of the time, that's why you see like, hey, it has to be a $10 minimum threshold to use a credit card, because it doesn't make sense otherwise, because you're getting screwed on fees.
Okay.
But the hidden cost, and that's why I'm going to talk about the hidden cost in this $100,000 example, is 4% or 5% of that $100,000 is going to be going towards just conversion in general. And that's not something that, Okay. So you're talking about massive amounts of money. Most people, it's like a couple $1,000s, but if you're talking about grands, like really big numbers over there, they're doing that because they have to convert that money for themselves anyways. If they're receiving USD, you have to pay out your employees in RMB or CNY, whatever's convenient for that region. They have to pay out, they have to use it for their own cost of goods and whatnot. So in theory, they have to either eat the cost, which not many businesses are just going to eat $40,000 worth of, fees. They're going to pass it on to you as the seller. So those are things that if sellers aren't empowered and they know where all the money is going towards, you have to start asking those questions like, hey, what if instead of that $100,000, is that all going towards this? What's that line item breaking down? Is it fees? Is it like, what is it all going towards? And a lot of times, businesses will tell you like, this is what it costs for me to convert it. That's on you to, if you want me to do business with me, that's what it's going to come down to. So
anybody that's buying inventory overseas, let's call it China for now, they should, if they're sending them money directly, US dollars, like I've done it before, and I've gone to my local bank and wired $25,000, $50,000. And so what I really should be doing is asking that supplier to break down the costs of that
Yeah.
$50,000 invoice all the way down to the level of currency conversion. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
if it's $100,000 example, if it's literally, if I'm paying 4%, that's $4,000 that I could be saving in that currency conversion, but there's going to be a cost associated with it through PingPong.
Yep.
So I'm going to wire that money to my PingPong account and then pay them in local currency. Is that a simple example of how it works?
Yeah. So opening an account with us. So take that first example that I displayed. How I always tell people is you as an entrepreneur need to save three things typically: time, your money, and your effort. So when you open an international bank account, you're spending all this time to just open a bank account so that you can convert it potentially in this different currency. And you have to do that for every marketplace you're going to be operating in. So if you're receiving,
I honestly, I've been doing this for almost a decade, Ryan. I can't count on a single hand how many people have told me, maybe more, but that have actually opened an international bank account. I just think they're wiring money there. I think they're losing 4% pretty easily. So skipping on to, the savings that PingPong provides.
Yep.
On that $100,000 and 4% a month. If I'm spending $100,000 a month, PingPong is going to help me with that. And how much am I going to save?
Yeah. So getting to the numbers, PingPong will never charge you more than 1% on our fees, and that's when you convert the currency. So if USD and it goes over to like RMB, for example, or it sends out to a different USD to USD, like that doesn't typically make too terribly much sense in terms of our ecosystem. But when you're changing an over in currency exchanges to a different currency, that's where we charge our fee, but it's 1% maximum. So instead of the wire, if you're wiring internationally, you're 50 to 150 bucks per wire. Then it's also doing it in person. So that's your time that you're spending doing it in person. Also, the currency conversion gets baked into that invoice. So you're still paying that on top of all these other currency conversions. What also banks do is that they will give you a set price for what that currency is. Like they'll set it for you. They're like, this is what it is. And we'll add our fees on top of that currency conversion. So again, 2, 3, 4%, depends on the bank, honestly, and how much you're doing. That's another way you get hit, like all those different ways, every portal that it goes through, that's where you get hit. With PingPong, you can use your receiving funds to either pay out your supplier, or if you're a US entity, you can, we call top up, or take your money from your bank account, put it into our ecosystem and send it out to that supplier, for example, in this case. And that ranges maximum, PingPong charges people as 1%.
Okay. So simple math.
You're just doing simple math
might be $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year in this simple example. And there's always nuances to it. So $36,000 a year in that example, a business is spending $100,000 a month on inventory. If you're, listing your business and it's being sold at a 4-time multiple, what is that? $144,000? Nah, something like that. Right. I think my 17-year-old.
It's 6 figures, right?
My 17-year-old's a math magician here, and he'd correct me to the penny. But it's a lot of money. And the point is that it's not just money being put in your pocket along the way, but it's money being put in your pocket when you eventually exit your business. And the bigger your business is, the better. This is a way for buyers that are out there listening to gain some instant equity, right? Our largest transaction we sold last year was $25 million. Imagine if that company's selling internationally and then signs up for a PingPong account with the inventory that they're spending or buying, how much instant equity you would get as a buyer by using services like PingPong.
Yeah. That's what I tell people. It's like, put that money towards your inventory or more goods or advertising, or just like paying yourself out even a little bit. Or I would suggest obviously reinvest in your business, but that's money that didn't exist before that you can just like instantaneously put towards products. That helps you grow quicker. That helps you exit quicker. That helps you do a lot of things a lot quicker.
All right. Well, let's talk logistics here, because I don't do this, and I'm going to ask some questions because the audience probably doesn't do it either. Some are probably using your services already, but let's just say I'm an Amazon seller and I'm getting paid out every 2 weeks. Is that money, and say some of it's international, some of it's domestic. Do I want the domestic money just to come to my bank account because there's not cross-border savings there, and then have the international funds go to my PingPong account?
Yeah. So in this case, Amazon pays you out every 2 weeks, which is like it's on a schedule. If you use your receiving funds, so in your example, if you have an international account that's coming to you're in the United States and you're selling in the UK, for example, yeah, absolutely. Use a service like PingPong to receive those funds internationally. So this is the cool part. Every 2 weeks, Amazon will pay you out and they will do those conversions for you. Say if I'm just dipping my toes in the international water and I'm only doing 10 grand a month or $1,000 a month, even there's no minimum threshold you have to use us in order to start receiving into your PingPong account. So that's step number one. That's fantastic.
Okay.
There's no monthly fees to hold on to your funds in any sort of currency. If it's $10,000 sitting there in your UK bank account, you don't have to convert it right away. That's the beauty is if I'm just selling $10,000 and I want to wait until it gets to $100,000, I can have that receiving fund receive the pound, let it sit there. It doesn't accrue interest or anything like that, but I can let it sit there until I'm ready to have it convert either to USD or I can take that money and convert it over to pay out a supplier. So you're eliminating the transactions back and forth commerce, basically. Think about PingPong. That's where our name came from. Back and forth over the single net. It's fast. It's furious. People get tired of watching it go back and forth. But with us, obviously, if it keeps going back and forth and transacts in different currencies, that's where you're going to keep getting hit with all these fees. So you can just hold on to it, limit the amount of transactions to different currencies, and use it for that one time when you need it. You can then make that currency conversion and then use our low rates to be able to convert it.
It's interesting. We've focused on inventory because I think that's where most people, and I did it. I took us on this track. Sorry if you didn't want to go there, but
oh no, you're fine. No,
this
is the typical situation that every seller has to deal with.
Yeah, and it's where most of the cost is, right? It's wiring funds internationally for inventory, but almost everyone I talk to and work with is using an international VA, freelancers, whatever the case might be. So I've got a client now that's got like 11 VAs in the Philippines, and I'm 99% sure they just send them a weekly wire or ACH,
probably through PayPal and through USD.
Yeah,
exactly.
So if they're spending $5,000 a month on VAs, which probably would be high if there's 10 of them, right? Maybe not. They can make those payments through their PingPong account if they have international revenue that they leave there from Amazon, or would I? If it's me, do I put the money in my PingPong account and then pay the VAs through my PingPong account?
So you can do one, either of those situations. So you can use your funds that you're using as receiving, like as an Amazon, from your Amazon payments, no matter if it's USD or we have 10 different currencies you can receive funds in. So that's US dollar, Canadian dollar, Mexican peso, the pound, the euro, the Japanese yen, Australian dollar, and then gets even crazier, the Singapore dollar, the Hong Kong dollar, and then I want to say AED, which is in the United Emirates. So even if you're paying people in the Middle East, that's also, and you're selling in the Middle East, which is a marketplace that is untapped. Really, you can start receiving funds in AED as well. So those are the kinds of fluency you can receive in, but you can pay out in 160 different currencies through our solution. So if it's going one way, you can use your funds either from your receiving accounts, like a from your bank accounts in Amazon that you're receiving from Amazon, and use those funds to pay out your VAs, or you can what we call top up. So you can put money into it, almost like topping up a debit card or like one of those prepaid cards. Right. You can put money into it from your US bank account, which is what we suggest to do for US sellers. And then you can pay out your VAs through there. So an example, case in point, I just talked with not even an Amazon seller, a service provider in, I won't say the company, but he has 250 employees all around the world, 100% remote. They're not all in the United States. They're actually almost all international. So he has to figure out and load in all of these different payment, conversions through a service provider and pay them out every 2 weeks. So if you're talking 250 employees, which is massive, and he's continuing to hire, he has to convert USD and his dollar account over to all those different currencies. So that's a lot for one person to handle. Typically what people suggest is like, just use PayPal. It's convenient. You can receive one-to-one as a customer, but those fees are astronomical. Like they were first in market and they're fantastic for like, I'm going to pay you back, Joe, for pizza. Like here's $10, boom. Sure. Like you and I, that's not a charge. Like it's going to be a lot. But when you're talking about, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, then that starts to rack up pretty quickly. We looked at his Stripe account and he receives subscriptions from like all over the world. So Stripe will convert that for you to your US bank account. That's the bank account you wanted to use. So from the pound to the USD, he didn't even see the breakdown in terms of fees. And I said, why don't you click on that little like icon right there? And it shows you that conversion process. And it said fees. It said $10,000 just for one marketplace and
Wow.
just for one person. And I was like, listen, Stripe is fantastic to receive credit card payments as a processor. They're technically a PSP, but they do one good thing, and they're going to accept credit cards. That's what they do. But when you take that money as a service provider and you put it towards my bank account, if I'm receiving funds internationally, they're going to convert that funds just like a bank, but they're going to charge that same 2.5% or so. So even if you save a 1.5%, that's still money that as a service provider who's not actively selling on Amazon can save instantaneously. He goes, I'm not going to downsize. I'm going to continue to scale. So that money might become $150,000 over the course of a year. And I said, what would you do with $150,000 if you just save that instantaneously? And he's like, I'd either add it on to my house or, put it into my business. Those are the kinds of possibilities where, if you don't ask the right questions, you don't know there's savings that can happen. And you make your business more valuable in that context as well, because it's not a, red line item where it's like you're losing on fees. Like you don't want to do that.
Now, how complex is this, right? So everybody I talk to is busy trying to keep their head above water, just kind of on the hamster wheel of trying to stay ahead and not getting anywhere. And then to add something on like this, is it complex, or do you and people on your team take a look at, okay, show me your, transactions, and you figure out how to save them money and what to do?
Yeah, it's not like checking your credit or anything. We're not in lending, so
Right.
that's
Right.
first and foremost. A lot of companies will do like the savings and cross borders and lending, which that's fantastic solutions for people.
Sure.
We are just strictly focused on e-commerce sellers and how they can optimize their e-commerce journey. And I say e-commerce because it's not just Amazon. It's like on Shopify. It's on Airbnb. It's like anywhere where you're receiving goods, Etsy, all those kinds of things where you're receiving funds internationally as an e-commerce seller. We can help you with those fees. So in terms of your question,
is it easy? Right. If I'm going to sign up for PingPong today, is it
you
easy?
Can go. So yeah, super easy. You can go today. It's free to sign up, which is the first barrier to entry. You don't have to pay a monthly fee. No, it's free to sign up. What you do is you put in your credentials, and it's called a KYC, or know your customer. It's like opening a bank account. You need to verify you are an entity and you can establish who you are. So because we work with tier 1 banks, so banks meaning Chase, Citi, Wells Fargo, HSBC. If you say, what is a popular bank, and you name it, it's probably who we're working with. I think Bank of America, for some reason, is like the only one we're not working with. So anyways, long story short, we are opening up a digital bank account with those banks on your behalf. So we need to verify you're a legit business entity, and we need to verify to them that you're not like some terrorist organization that's like funding money around the world and sending money across borders and whatnot. So those are like compliance and regulations that we have to strictly go under. But your money is within these banks under a legitimate bank account, routing number, you get your PIN number, all that fun stuff that you get to use for business purposes. Like it's all B2B focused. So that's where it's easy to do. It takes, once you fill out those forms and upload those documents, it can take same day to get verified to start receiving and sending money. That same time. So any new entity that you send money to, you just have to verify, hey, this is our contract agreement. They're a freelancer. I pay them every 2 weeks. And then they become part of your drop-down button that you can either schedule out payments, or you can just do one-off payments. However, you need to automate it.
Okay. I'm not looking for an easy solution. Everything that is worth doing is generally, takes some effort. That's for sure.
Exactly. Right.
Look, when I started first doing, this service that we provide at QuietLight, 2012, there was really no international Amazon sellers, or heck, Target Online, I don't think existed. Right. And now there's all sorts of marketplaces, and they're growing internationally. Amazon being the biggest place for expansion. Where do you really see this going from your point of view as somebody that deals with so many cross-border transactions? Do you guys track the growth of cross-border transactions? Do you see can you predict what's going to happen more accurately than I can for the next, 1 to 3 years for the folks that are selling US and want to go international?
Yeah. So I'm going to start throwing some numbers at people just in context of like where the industry is going, not just for e-commerce, but in fintech. Just recently, a competitor of ours, Payoneer, been around in the space for 15 plus years, started in Israel. Now they're based out of, I think, New York. They just got acquired and went public and valuated at what, I think it was $3.5 billion just as a company entity. And that was just like some blank check company that purchased them. So $3.5 billion. I think the latest statistic that they showed was they're facilitating $60+ billion in transactions. That's coming and going across border. That's across borders.
Okay.
PingPong itself, we've been around for 5 years, and we've seen data and analytics. We did it roughly $20 to $25 billion in 2020. So 5 years at a third of the time. Yeah, with a B, like a big B.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've been around a third of the time. That's the amount of cross-border payments that we saw. That's in all of our marketplaces in China. That's in India. That's in South Korea. That's US.
Sure.
So on and so forth. So that's with the B. So we're growing at a rate that's pretty phenomenal and fantastic. Even in a it's a decade. 2020 felt like a decade. In a year where everything was very much different than expected, but it's still there's growth. The other statistic I will start throwing out there with you is that you said international sellers weren't a thing back when you first started. 70 marketplace polls came out with this number in January. 75% of new sellers in the Amazon ecosystem were all coming from China. And that's across the Amazon board in every single marketplace. It was, across all new sellers, it was all from China. There was a lot coming from Europe. US is still very much up there, but there's a lot of international players who are trying to make their, nut, if for lack of a better term, on Amazon.
That doesn't help the US seller. That's a scary, number. Is 75% of the new sellers are from China. That would worry a lot of people that sell online now from the US.
So, well,
I mean is if I'm a US seller, how big is it? How important is it for me to look at going internationally over the next 1 to 3 years?
Yeah. And let me back up. So that's new sellers, right? That's not like I'm successful on Amazon. That's sure. Definitely just like I open an account and I want to throw out a product. That's still good. Like that I think it went from like 47% to 75, which is definitely growth opportunities, but there's still, of the top sellers of all like 1,000 top Amazon sellers, still a significant portion are coming from Amazon in the United States, and they're located in the United States. But for opportunity to grow internationally, so this is like, no matter where you are as a seller in marketplaces, Amazon.com has been first to market in everything. They are trailblazers. Everything gets greenlit here. Everything, everything gets tested in this market. And then that starts to roll out slowly to these other marketplaces. I think we're at 18 different marketplaces, with Poland being the most recent one, I think is what they're just announced. So of 18 countries around the world, there's only, of the hundreds that are in the world, there's 18 that have Amazon as an ecosystem there. And that's kind of crazy in terms of that skew of numbers. Amazon will continue to push to have outside sellers sell in marketplaces like India, where it's very hard to sell as an outside seller to get into India. But once that happens, and it will eventually happen, that will be a marketplace you could absolutely dominate to billions of people, like right there and instantaneously. International marketplaces has been something really cool to keep an eye on, because I never tell people don't sell on Amazon.com, because that'd be silly to not do. You start there and then you start to grow your brand internationally, because that's where a lot of these aggregator companies are going to start taking your brand to the next level, because they're going to first and foremost look at, how can I start to put your products in international opportunities? Is that in Europe, which 66 to 75% of the business in Europe and Amazon is happening in UK and then Germany. So those are the two markets you have to be in.
I was going to ask that, which, knowing what which marketplaces should people focus on? UK and Germany. Okay.
Yeah. Two and three are UK and Germany, 100%. Now, because of Brexit, I had a couple of guests on, Andy Hooper, who talks with ecom. I think it's ecom group. It's one of his ecom groups. And he touts about how to help Amazon sellers get into UK. The only difference is in with Brexit, and we'll just talk about that real quickly. Brexit, the only difference is that they don't have that natural cross-border, essentially, relationship with people where you can just take your goods from UK and then distribute to the rest of the EU. You have to put send goods in UK and then also do it in Netherlands, for example. He said, go into Netherlands, and then from there, it can be distributed amongst the EU network pretty easily. But more often than not, your marketplaces of growth are going to be Germany, in UK, and those two flip flop 2 and 3 in the Amazon ecosystem. Number 3 of like those are 2A and 2B. Number 3 on the list is Japan, which is kind of crazy. So
Really?
you think of Amazon marketplaces, they did roughly, I want to say just shy for monthly visitors in the Amazon ecosystem in .jp. It was just over, I want to say, 1 billion unique views a month.
Wow.
So US marketplace
how does
is
that
about
compare to
4.5.
Canada? It seems like Canada
Higher.
seems to be much higher, I would think. A lot of people just go, okay, well, go to Canada, relatively speaking the same language, unless you're deep in Quebec, or
Yeah.
Quebec, why do people go to Canada first versus, the UK, Germany, or Japan?
It's easy. So there's programs out there like the NARP program, which is a really stupid term. It sounds like you're throwing up. It's the North American Remote Fulfillment Program, where you can have your FBA inventory get delivered to Canada Marketplace. You just open up your account, but you can have it, instead of sending goods there, it would just get delivered,
Okay.
a week later, or, you can dip your toes in that. But I just had, I had a guest on my show yesterday. I was like, why is Canada such a faux pas? Why do people think like it's difficult to understand, or why are people just not taking advantage of Canada? Canada or any international marketplace, people look at the logistics of tax. So for UK, it's VAT. And that's super scary to understand. You're like, I don't want to have to deal with more tax. It's, for lack of a better term, and this is a very simplistic way of putting it, it's sales tax. It's 20%. You're going to get charged it. You're going to pay it. If you're in the United States, you're getting charged sales tax anyways. You as a seller are just going to have to fill out different forms and documents, get registered, and then it's really easy to just pay those entities and authorities out whenever you need to. So
the
it's
key
just
for an Amazon seller in the UK is you gotta add the tax onto the list price of the item you're selling. Otherwise, you are screwed. That's
exactly.
The key. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, as a business, if you're not paying your VAT or GST, you're going to get really screwed when you try to exit your business and say, how do I balance these books and make them look clean? That's exactly number one reason you have to pay those authorities online. And it's free to do. You can do it in PingPong's ecosystem. You can pay those authorities for free with your funds. No problem. You just load it in and then you can pay them out. It's not a moneymaker for us, but it's a use of authority. Like, you can use it for ease, for lack of ease. So going into those marketplaces, I think it's just the education in general. People don't want to have to I have to translate my listings. I have to figure out how to get all my inventory there. What a lot of people just think is like, whatever I'm doing in the United States, I have to basically replicate that 100% and put it in those marketplaces. It's not true. You can start your MOQ, or your minimum order quantity, with your supplier. You can start talking with them now, and you can say, hey, if I want to start sending 10% of these goods to UK, for example, what would that cost me? And you can start asking, like, what is the minimum order quantity amount that you can put into those marketplaces, and really start to see how that goes. So testing that out, you don't have to do 100% of your capacity what you do in the US marketplace. Scale it appropriately and know what does well. For Canada, it's really easy to do because, it's close. It's not like going across another different ocean or around the world. You put your inventory there, and you don't have to do translations or listing translations, because the question came up yesterday, do you have to translate in Quebec for French? And no, that's not true. A lot of sellers or people who are shopping on Amazon, they just have their browser translate it for them, albeit like there are words you should worry about, contextually, but for more often than not, you don't have to do
like
a
what?
second.
Let's have some fun. What word should we worry about contextually if we're speaking in English and it's translated into French?
Well, I know, like, I'm trying to think of the words that were specific in Canada. I would be worried about for French context, how different images. I'd be more worried about your imagery, and as well as like how it's being perceived as like your use. So in UK, for example, like how elevator is different from lift. They say lift and we say elevator, or you say bollocks and you say balls. So if like there's a toy set and you have a bunch of balls and whatnot, like I'm just making this up. I don't know how much we have to censor this.
How about
for
a
children.
fanny pack?
Or fanny pack, exactly. Look up fanny pack, yeah, and that's for lack of a better term, your ass. So it's so things like that where
no, it's not your ass. It's something different in the UK.
Or, that too. I'm saying, like, you might think fanny, like for some people, like I think your butt, but obviously it means other things. We'll censor that for the audience, but just not knowing how that translates in cultural.
Yeah.
It does. it's not that big of a deal in Canada. So those opportunities, I think it's just easy to do. And I think that's why it's so weird that people aren't just trying to get into Canada.
Yeah.
It's not going to scale like Amazon.com, but most people are shopping, they're closer to the border anyway. So your goods are going to get there just as quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might see maybe 5 or 10% of somebody's total revenue if they're selling in Canada compared to the US.
And people have done as high as 30%. It really just depends on how well and how, exactly. It's a green market. It's an opportunity market for sure.
But all the international stuff, cross-border stuff, I think it's, critically important that people take a look at PingPong, and just seriously consider using the service. It may not seem like it's going to affect your bottom line very much, folks. Buyers definitely look at it. It's going to help you gain instant equity if you've got an international seller, or if you're buying an international business. But sellers, as you expand, which you're going to, if you're going to be holding your business for the next 5 years, you are probably going to expand internationally. If you're paying VAs, which we know you are, if you're buying inventory internationally, which everyone is except for supplement manufacturers or sellers, and sure, there are some that are doing different things that they're able to get them made in the U.S. But for the most part, it is international. I think there could be sizable savings by using PingPong. Before we wrap up, I want to talk quickly about your podcast, because you've got Crossover Commerce Podcast. Tell us about what that is, and if people want to listen to some of the things you talk about there, what are they going to hear?
Yeah, so this podcast started by accident back in 2020, just like in the age of like how people started selling on Amazon. It's always by accident, right? It's never planned. But I started this podcast with kind of just a person in the space that he was Rob Stanley. He was with Accrumi. I think you had him on the show.
Sure, yeah,
he was with Feedback Was at the time. And there's a question from our China audience. They're like, hey, we just want to understand, again, international audiences, they want to get different perspectives on how to be successful. And I think depending on who you are, you want to make sure that everyone can be successful in the right way. Obviously, you don't want like hijacking and like things like that. But for Amazon sellers in China, they were really worried about like getting shut down for imagery and copyrights and things like that. And they were just like, from a US perspective, how do we prevent that? Like, how do we educate people not to do that? And so I reached out and was like, hey, I have a network of people. I used to work at Viral Launch. I was in the e-commerce industry, and everyone's at home, so I kind of know where to find them. And so you just message them and say like, hey, this is kind of the topic that we want to cover. Can we educate people? Do you know anyone that would be smart to talk on this? And he goes, yeah, like we have Jeff Schick of Ralston Schick. They're in Florida. I think they're in Florida or California, one or the other. And he goes, yeah, let's just do like a Zoom or something like that. And we'll call it whatever you want to call it. And I came up with the name Crossover Commerce because we talk about, cross-border payments, but crossover commerce, everything and anything Amazon or e-commerce related, made sense. And I think it's almost a Timmons term, like the crossover. This is how meta I got. The crossover is your weakest point in your game in terms of table tennis. Like it's your weakest part of your backhand essentially. So that movement is your weakest part, and how to grow it is what I wanted to do from a different perspective. So I took the name and I ran with it. And Rob, we filmed our first episode. It was edited. It was like the whole 9 yards. And I go, this is really cool. Like I want to do another one. When are you free, Rob? And he goes, man, I got so much else to do. Like I'm CMO. Like I have other projects. And I go, that's fine. Do you mind if I just kind of see where it goes from here? And I just finished my 54th episode of going live with people. And we do it unedited. If I sound like an idiot or bumbling, I don't get to cut it out. It's live for people to kind of ask questions and consume it. But my perspective is I don't try to pitch or don't try to do anything specific. It's presented by PingPong Payments. So I do my read in like you do. And like, hopefully, people are like, oh, that's great. I want to sign up. But my whole point is bringing value to an e-commerce seller that they didn't get from that when they walked in or started listening to our podcast. So even if they're like, oh yeah, I know about PPC, like that's fantastic. But yeah, it's on our PingPong Payments YouTube channel. We have all of our videos that go on there. We go live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And then we put them up on our podcasts through, Amazon Music, Shopify or Shopify.
So you can be found anywhere basically.
Yeah. So if you search Crossover Commerce, you can find us for sure.
Cool. For PingPong, what's the best way for the audience to reach you?
Yeah, so you reach out to me directly. It's ryan.kramer@pingpongx.us. And if you're a listener and you were like, hey, how do I get signed up? How can you guys help me save money? Email me directly. We'll make sure like your first month is for PingPong fees are $0. So you won't be paying any fees for us. But we'll make sure that you get integrated in our platform. We walk you through with our white glove service, sales team and customer service team. So if you email us, or I can make sure that there's a link that's given to Joe and his team, and then they can click and sign up for free through there as well.
Yeah, we'll add some links to the podcast, folks, but reach out to Ryan at PingPong. And I'm going to give a shout out to our friends at Accrumi. These folks help sellers raise capital to buy more inventory. They provide capital to buy more inventory, and they were on the podcast probably about 6 episodes ago. So reach out to them as well. Ryan, fantastic. Thanks for your time. I hope you'll be able to help a lot of the Quiet Light audience. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe.
And that's a wrap of another Quiet Light podcast. Folks, please do us a favor, reach out and give us a like or review, anything you can do to help us grow the audience and our organic rankings. The more people we reach, the more people we can help, and the more people we help, the better lives they're going to have through a bigger exit someday and a better operated and run business. So give us a ratings and review. Much appreciated. We'll see you next week.